All right, guys, I got a lot more answers than I bargained for over the past couple of weeks, and it's been an absolute living hell. I got traumatized all over again, but I got answers that I never thought I'd get, and I didn't see. And I can't believe I didn't see it. Well, of course I didn't see it. I didn't know. Are you guys sitting down? I hope you're sitting down, because if you've been following this channel, we're gonna get some answers. You're gonna get some answers in this video, and you're gonna understand exactly where my parents came from and who my parents are now. I'll give you a little bit of background in case you don't know my channel, and I'll use 1 minute because my God, can I talk? I've tried to record this video at least 25 times in the past week, but every time I record it, I remember new things. New things come together. When you verbalize things, new things come together. So as of 5 this morning, I had a previous version, but when I started to upload the video, I had a final memory, and it put everything even more into perspective. So here it goes. Background on me. I have borderline personality because I was raised by a psychopath and a narcissistic woman. My father was the psychopath. I say he's a psychopath because his family knew he was a psychopath. They didn't know what his problem was, but my father was raping young boys in the family or molesting them, younger males, and he ended up doing the same thing to my brother and myself. Now his mother knew what she had done, or knew what she had, what she did. Whether she did it or not, we don't know. But my father said something about his own father being a pedophile when I was a little boy. He was a fishing. He liked to go fishing, and he had an old fishing rod. And my mother said, I mean, I was a little 4-year-old boy at this time, but I remember it like yesterday, standing right there near the closet. My parents would be shocked that I remembered. My mother said, "Why don't we go buy your father a new fishing rod? Look at this old stuff he's using." My father said to my mother, "Don't worry, he doesn't go to fish anyways. He only goes to look at the little kids." He doesn't say little, he says only goes to look at the kids. I didn't know what he was talking about, of course, but when I found out my father molested me, my brother, and then I unrepressed what my father did to me, all made sense. Now then I didn't understand, why did my mother stay with him? Why did she, what was the whole thing? I mean, if he was into young boys, I dug deep, family, connections, research, internet, court cases. You don't want to know how I figured it all out. You probably do, because maybe you can figure things out about your own family or ex-girlfriend or ex-wife if you use all this kind of stuff. I mean, I went back into newspapers from the 1940s to find out who was related to who, where they lived. I made phone calls to people who I hadn't spoken to in 30 years, who I grew up with, who knew my parents when I was a little boy, etc., etc. I mean, I spoke to almost everyone I could, except for I spoke to my father's lawyer. I spoke to who would know a lot more than the average person. Anyways, but I can't tell you what every person told me, because a lot of it they told me don't tell, don't reveal that I'm the one who. Anyways, my mother married my father for money. My mother was a stripper. Back, obviously before I was born, way long ago, she was a stripper. My mom was a sociopath. Her parents were not pedophiles, but her father and mother were the first to get divorced. They got divorced in the 50s when nobody got divorced. And my mother was abused badly by her mother. Physically. Like, I mean, abusive. Like, she was beaten and made to eat certain, when she would vomit and all that horrible stuff you hear about mothers abusing their oldest children, their daughters. So I feel bad about that. But anyway, so my mom became a narcissist. She went to become a stripper to try to get out of that situation, I imagine, of poverty, because she was raised in poverty. She ends up meeting my father's mother, who either owns the strip club or somehow is involved, because as I found out, she was a crime. They were all into crime, my father's side. She married my father for $1 million. My grandmother wanted my father to have some kind of a life to come home to, so she said, marry this man, so when he comes home after whatever sick stuff he's up to. He has a whatever. So he has a home base basically. So my mother was hired to be my father's fake wife. The rule was they only had to take care of us till we were 18, and bring us up like Jewish kids, Jewish school, Jewish culture. That's it. That was the rule. Of course, I didn't know it. I grew up thinking my parents were loving parents, although I didn't feel much love. I felt, they were still my parents. They were around. We had I thought I had a family. I knew other kids had divorced parents. I didn't. God, I'm going on and on from my intro. And so I know that they planned because they moved away when I was to Florida. They moved to Florida. They always were going to Florida their whole life. And when I was about 20, 22, they moved to Florida for good. Left there, both kids, both sons, unmarried here, different country, and fled. And they were hinting that they were moving to Florida since I was about 10 years old. So it was all a plan. They had no inclination of dealing with us in long term and growing a family and nurturing us as healthy human beings that they would have for their old age. No, it was a temporary thing. They thought they'd do it for, it would be a 18-year issue and they both would go off millionaires. Well, I guess it worked. Okay, now I'm going to tell you what I figured out, guys. For those who've been with me for 3 or 4 years, I've been doing this. My God, this is really. Well, it's not the end of the line. It seems like that it always goes deeper. I always think I got to the end of the line, so this is probably not the end of the line. But it brings you guys real close to this. Okay, let's recap. My father's side. That's where all the intrigue takes place. Because my mother left her side of the family, and that's why she scapegoated me. Because her side of the family had no idea about this agreement. They had no idea my mother was a stripper, and she's also a lesbian, by the way, but that's all strippers seem to be bisexual. I've dated many. And then that's the irony. I've dated many strippers, and I never knew my mother was. And I always broke up with them because I thought my mother wouldn't accept them. And that's why my mother is such an idiot. I may have had like a good girlfriend. She may have, I may have had a normal life if my parents just admitted what they were all about. What is that? Oh, I have a sunspot on my nose. All right. So, is it following my nose? Yeah, look at that. So, that's not a sunspot. It's when I smashed myself. I just remembered. I walked into something. I was looking at a girl. And I walked into a street sign. Since I'm a little boy, I used to have bike accidents. I would drive right into cars because I'd be looking at the girls. I was always such a okay. Guys, man, it's sick. So just to recap, my father is a rich family. How rich? Well, his mother owned a hotel in Miami Beach at some point. So they sold it. But they owned a lot of real estate. Jewish, owned real estate, pedophiles, in Florida, baby boomers. Am I making any connection yet? Okay, here it goes, guys. I'm gonna wait till that person in my hallway leaves because I don't like when someone's in my fucking hallway when I'm trying to fucking record a video. And they'll sit there for like 20 minutes. Excuse me. It's funny, I just watched another video from a guy who was also getting upset because he couldn't find a moment of silence. So he finally said, I'm gonna record this effing video even though there's noise outside. Because I thought the kids would shut up by now, but they're obviously not gonna shut up. I don't have kids, I have a grown adult who doesn't know how to fucking get out of the fucking hallway. You know what that's all about, man. Anyways, let me finish my story, and I'll just talk like this until they fucking maybe get the fucking idea. Excuse me. I made a lot of advances on my borderline. I'll tell you that in another video. Okay, so, rich Jewish family in Florida. My parents were always running away. I never understood why they were always running away to Florida. What's so great in Florida, right? That was one of the things I always said. It was like, I didn't really say that. I figured they would just go there to be themselves, but it still didn't. Something didn't make sense. A few things didn't make sense. Like when my mother sabotaged me, which she did throughout my life in a lot of ways. Too embarrassing and humiliating to admit in many cases. But anyways, she would ruin my jobs, get rid of my girlfriends. Mostly it was my finances, right? Because there's only so much she can do to I mean, she can't get rid of a girlfriend overnight. She can only uh, slander me and slowly work on her. She did. Many of them. All of them. Now I know what they were speaking about, what they were trying to do. Anyways, whatever. And jobs and businesses. There was a lot of ways they were able to do it because I trusted them. They were my parents. My father had my internet access for my websites. I had one account for all my websites, and his was one of my websites. At the end, he took off my password, so I couldn't access any of my portfolio. So I lost 20 years of internet work, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. That's why I don't program anymore, because without that portfolio, I was like, forget it, man. You know what? It's dead and buried, and if I'm gonna fight to build a whole other portfolio, like, forget it, man. I did enough for that programming. 25 fucking years. I did it for fucking 35 years, but I did it as a job for 25 years. Okay, I'm gonna get to the picture, guys. I know I'm dragging this on because you know what? If I'm boring, you don't deserve to hear the end. Because I don't want the whole world to know. Just you guys. My father looks at me one day when he comes back from Florida. I'm in my late 20s. I only see my parents maybe twice a year by this point. They come in for family events on my father's side. Again, it's always my father's side. My father's side, I have to be there. We're supposed to be looking like gold and dressed up and shaved. It's perfect, right? Narcissists, basically. My father's side is the side that's full of narcissists, and what I found out was the pedophile side. So my father looks at me once he comes back from Florida. This time, by the way, I knew nothing about them, right? You have to understand, I didn't know my parents were pedophiles. I thought they were happily married. My brother was still alive. They hadn't fucking put him in the grave yet. May his soul rest in peace. My father looks at me over Chinese food. No, I think it was steak, whatever. I know it was steak. We went to the steakhouse. See, it never made sense. My parents had no money on some level, but on other levels they had unlimited money. And my mother, she'd sabotage me. What I was trying to get at was every time she'd sabotage me. And then I'd go crying to her, why did you do that? Why did you tell me this? Or why did you, she would throw me $5,000, $10,000. Well, she would give me like $2,000 or something. And then she'd go, if you need more, you'll tell me. I didn't even ask for that $2,000 really. She goes, what do you need? If you need money, I'll give you. I never saw it happening, guys. I've told you this many times. You think I'm a spoiled kid, maybe, but no, it wasn't like I went to my parents, you owe me money, or I'm going broke, I don't want to work. I always got jobs. Just that my mother would sabotage me. And then I would go crying to her because she was my mom. I wouldn't even necessarily be blaming her because I wouldn't really know it was her who did it sometimes. But she would feel guilty, or she had it planned. She goes, okay, well, what do you need? And then she'd send me $2,000, $3,000, maybe $5,000, maybe a couple of times as much as 10 over a few months. And during those few months, she would be telling people, oh, my son is having trouble. Him and my husband are working together and they're doing. You see what I mean? She would pull me back in the family by cutting my legs off and then giving me money. Little bit at a time, $1,000, $2,000 over the period of a few months until she had enough of me, and the story was set again for a few more years. She can prove to everyone I was still alive and involved in the family or whatever. I never understood where that money came from. The whole thing didn't make sense. I told you guys, I go, she's still being a prostitute? She couldn't be, right? She could be a stripper when she's young. She could inherit $1 million when we turned 18, or the $2 million. She could be an escort after. But she's 77 now. She's been doing this still up to this point. Well, until I left her 4 years ago. So where was the money coming from? Something didn't make sense. Especially because my parents told me that there was no life insurance, that when they died, I'm not getting anything. Be prepared. When I told them after my brother was dead, I said, my God, I don't know what I mentioned about life insurance, but something about my brother's life insurance. I said, I don't know what I said, but anyways, guys. Okay, my parents take me out for dinner, and my brother out to dinner. My mother and my brother are talking. So my father and I are one-on-one. Whenever my father and I are one-on-one, he would often say things he shouldn't say. because he's trying to impress me. He's a narcissist. He wants to make himself look good. He wants to have some kind of relationship with me, but he knows that he doesn't really. He's hiding himself, right? So he tries too hard. And would say things that he shouldn't have said because they would give up my mother's story. Because my father probably didn't care. The truth was, my father, psychopath. He cares, he doesn't really care. My mother really cared. My father was born into that family. He didn't need to walk around pretending he was a rich man. It's like me. I was born into that family. Money doesn't mean anything to me because when you're born with something, you're given to it, give or take. I mean, look, today I'm poor. Do you see me crying? I have no money to my name at all now. Not even 10 cents. I have a bunch of aluminum cans in my bathtub. Okay? So money, it's like if you're raised with something, I don't think you crave it as much. I think that's... Anyhow, fuck. But my mother always wanted to be with my father's side of the family. Okay, here it goes, guys. 15 minutes in, I'm finally getting to it. My father looks at me over the table and says, "Hey, man, I have a story for you." Gets my attention. He goes, "Your mother and I were invited to a private island owned by a billionaire." He goes, I was told there was young girls all over the island. All over the island. He said, "It's like a paradise for you." He goes, "If you ever want to come down and see your parents," because they always wanted to get me to go to Florida and see them. But I never went because I had a criminal record and they're going to arrest me at the border. So I tell my parents that, and they would go, "Come anyways, don't matter, they're not going to stop you." Yeah, because they wanted me to get arrested at the border so they can tell their family, again, I'm having trouble. That's why that's why my father's not around, because he's dealing with my son who's in jail. See, they constantly. Now you see what I dealt with. What kind of sick fucking sociopaths I was raised by. And they did a good job. They actually had me arrested. Anyways, I won't go into that. That's just too private and too sick. They're sick people. They're sick people. How sick? Well, now you're getting the idea, right? They invited me to Epstein's Island. Well, my father said it was full of young girls, guys. I was only in my 20s. He's already in his 50s. So young girls, I figured, my age. I didn't think there were young girls, like underage girls. And secondly, I didn't give a shit about the girls. I had a girlfriend. Girls were not a problem. Girls were not something I was going to run off to meet in Florida. Even if you, like, especially if you told me they were underage girls. Hell, I'm going to go to Florida to see a bunch of teeny boppers? The fuck, man? It's like the opposite of my entire mentality. So, but I heard billionaire, and I was in the internet business. And I'm like, "Did you go to the island?" He's like, "No, your mother and I took a pass. We're not into that kind of thing." And I got mad. I'm like, "Dude, he's a billionaire, man." I'm like, "A billionaire could help you. You have business problems." I go speak to the billionaire. I go get in. I didn't know right? What my parents were all about. I thought my father was really a businessman. He wasn't. It was all a scam. I mean, yes, he was in the business, but he wasn't really a businessman. He was like a, guys in the mafia, or sometimes they say they're involved in construction, but they're not really in construction. It's like a cover, and sometimes they'll play and within it, but there's always a crime around it, and it's always based on some kind of embezzlement, or that's how my father did his business. So I'm saying, dude, like, he's a billionaire, go, and he just. I kept asking him, "A real billionaire?" I mean, at the time, hearing a billionaire 20 years ago is not like today. Today we hear there's a lot of billionaires. Back then, it was like, there were no billionaires. I don't even know if Bill Gates was a billionaire back then. Probably he was one, but so this guy's a billionaire. So I didn't forget that story. He never told me his name, but we know his name now, right? Okay, guys. Now you know where my father's and mother's circle of friends were. Now it all makes sense to us all, does it not? I told you they were from a rich family, running off to Florida, and finally moved to Florida when I was in my 20s. Why? Pedophiles, perverts. My mother's Okay, so I took it a level further. I was like, well, how do they know? How would my mother be invited? So I did a little thinking. It didn't take more than basically recording 2 videos, and while I was recording it, it came back. It's obvious, and when you guys hear it, you're just gonna like, wow. Guys, my father's sister, okay, so my father has rich parents. Those parents have 3 kids. My father, his older sister, and there was a middle one who died young, well, died in her 50s, and she was like me. She was the black sheep. She was kept near the mother and the father, very close, as an alibi for the whole mess. But the older sister was married off to a heart surgeon. Okay, he's a multi-millionaire for many years because he was brought into the family, and I think my grandmother paid for his education so he would become something in the community. She chose him, just like she chose my mother, you see. So it was this pre-planned arranged marriages from this wealthy lesbian criminal mastermind on my mother's side. That's how I was born. And a few other cousins who I've identified, and a few other marriages within the big family are the same. And the other families have no idea. And that's why I have not gone back, because I realized, oh my God, this cousin has no idea. He's like me, even though his brother and sister, or even though his brother is gay, married to a fake wife, they have no idea, or at least I think, pretty sure some of them have no idea. Just the way they're kept at a distance, like I was. I see the way it works now. I mean, so this older sister, my father's older sister, she watched over my mother and my father like parents. She was basically like also very concerned about my father being what he was, and she always bailed him out of business problems and criminal cases. My father got arrested in Florida and spent a year. She dealt with the consulate here to get him out a few weeks early. I mean, she was a socialite, right? High up, her and her husband. So I realized, oh my God, they were going to Florida too all the time. It wasn't just my mother and my father. It was my father's rich socialite sister. They were there just as often. And then I'm like, no, man. My parents were following them there. They were rich, wealthy, stable socialites who were also in arranged fake marriage. So they knew the gig. They were all friends, basically. It wasn't like 2 couples. It was like my mother and my father's sister and her husband were not really 2 couples. They were more like 4 friends who were put together by my father's mother. Anyways, they had a couple of daughters. This is my aunt, my father's sister, very wealthy, with the husband who's the heart surgeon. They have 3 daughters. They have 2 daughters and a son. All of them are put into Harvard and Yale. The youngest one works for Bill Clinton in the White House. We all knew it. There was photos all over the house of her with Bill Clinton. They were friends. She was part of the circle of Bill Clinton's friends. My aunt. Guys, this is just sick. This is crazy. Here it goes, guys. You guys are just not going to fucking believe it, man. Nobody in the world knows this except for you and I. My aunt has passed away, so I can talk about her openly now, and fuck them. What they did to me, this family, fuck them. My aunt, who was supposedly married, right? This is my father's sister, my father's wealthy sister, who's married to the heart surgeon, supposedly. They have a daughter who they have a bunch of kids, and they all go to Harvard and Yale. But they have a young daughter who goes to Harvard, who goes into law or international affairs, works for Bill Clinton. Around this time, guys, after she graduates law and starts to work for Bill Clinton, my aunt, who at this point is already in her 50s, moves to where Harvard is. I don't know. I don't even know where that fucking school is, to tell you the truth. She moved there for 3 years to study law. She never practiced law. She's an older lady. She was already wealthy. It never made sense to me. I used to always ask, why did she study law? And they would say, oh, she wanted to prove that she was as intelligent as her husband and didn't really need him. So it was like an ego thing. That's what my mother said. My mother's a narcissist. She would always project her own narcissism on other people. She would say, well, she wanted to become a lawyer. Anyway, guys, she wasn't studying law. Or I don't think she was studying law. If she was studying law, there was only one reason she was studying law. You sitting down? She was having an affair with Alan Dershowitz. They're the same age, guys. They spoke about Alan Dershowitz all the time. They spoke about Clinton. But Dershowitz was the one who was the Jewish one. The one who somehow knew the family. Yeah, because they were dating. They were for 3 years. She was there for a bunch. I used to say, where is she? Why would she go with It didn't make sense at the time at all. I mean, I'm a little kid. It still didn't. I wasn't such a little kid by then. I was my teenage years, but I was like, it just didn't make sense. Now it makes complete sense. So they knew Dershowitz. They knew Clintons. They knew the Epsteins. I don't think there's anything more to say, guys. That's how my parents became. That's my parents, guys. Now you know. Now I know why. And now I understand it even more. I mean, my mother's a cocaine addict. My father's into young boys. So that in itself makes them want to put some distance between them and the people who know them, their false image. But if they've got a friend since the 90s, a compadre who's into their deviance, who's got $1 billion, and whose whole life is based around partying with younger people, of course they're going to be running off to Florida at all times to feed their addiction and to usurp off this guy or just to parasite off this billionaire Epstein. That's what I can see. Of course they went to the island. I mean, I thought at first that they wouldn't have gone because it was just girls, but I'm thinking, my mother, of course, she knows a billionaire with a private island, the narcissist stripper. You don't even have to know my mother. Tell me something. Is a narcissistic sex worker ever in a million years going to take a pass on a single man's billionaire sex island? Is there a chance? It's like saying, would that same woman take a pass at the Playboy mansion? Oh, I'm not into it today. I'm going to go shopping instead of Walmart. No. And when my father told me about that island, I remember my mother looking over. My mother did something that she did many times, and now I remembered it. And I said, I'm going to show my viewers this, because it was like, it's how I know. You see, it's how I know certain things that my mother and my ex-girlfriend and all these crazy fucking people were lying, because they would do the same mannerisms every time they were lying. With my mother, she would do this to my father. Ah! And my father would do it too. Ah! Ah! That meant, don't say it. My mother looked over. She goes, ah! He wasn't really a billionaire. Ah! Leave it. Ah! He wasn't a billionaire. That was a sign to my father. Shut up. Don't talk about it. He's a smart kid. He's going to figure something. Just, why did you bring it up? He did that often. He had to show off. He knew a billionaire. And he also knew I would like it. Concept is cool. Okay, so now here's where it goes even sicker, guys. It comes back to my mother. I told you I saw my mother in a strip club. I was already 17. I'd gone to a strip club for the first time with my friends on Saturday. I see all these naked girls around. I couldn't believe it. So that Wednesday, I skipped school. Or that Tuesday or Wednesday, I think it was the Wednesday. It took 2 days for me to build up, the urge or the confidence. I said, I'm going by myself. Like, I don't want to go with my friends because they're kind of like getting in my way. I want to see if I can go and maybe I guess I wanted to meet one of those girls. I mean, they're all naked. You can see how good they look, and they're all acting so nice to you. When you're 17, you think they really like you. And you don't really care. All you see is those girls, and you're like, my God, I mean, So I find myself back there. I'm skipping school. I walk in, and I see my mother grab her purse or what. I can see my mother sneak in the back and then run out with like a purse like 5 minutes later and run out the back. But I didn't think it was my mother. I mean, I thought it was my mother, but by that time she'd already sent a stripper to talk to me. She was right in my face telling me I was the most beautiful man she'd ever saw, and she'd never seen me before. I didn't see it as suspicious. I thought I got what I came for. I ended up licking that girl's asshole when she danced for me. I made her dance, and she turned around and I went right up her ass. Anyways, that was probably my mother's girlfriend, okay? My mother obviously heard about that. I spoke about that. I wasn't shy about it. My mother actually knew from her side. I forgot about my mother. Anyways, so my mother was there. My mother was already in her 40s. So what was she doing in a strip club with young women? She was like maybe over 50 already. I think maybe she was a recruiter. I used to see her doing the books around that time. I think maybe she was doing the accounting, the corrupt accounting for the strip club. That's probably what she said. It was for the B'nai B'rith, for a Jewish organization. No, I doubt it. I can't prove if those books were my mother, but then I was thinking maybe my mother was a recruiter. Maybe my mother was a recruiter for these strip clubs. I mean, if you're an old lady working for a strip club at all, you're basically a recruiter, because when you meet young women who are pretty, you might say, well, do you want to make some money? And then I remembered something. I was like, oh my God. My mother might have been a recruiter. She knew Epstein's wife, girlfriend, whatever, that woman who's now being looked at as like Epstein's number one so whatever partner in crime, this woman Ghislaine or something. My mother mentioned this name Giselle many times. At least I thought it was Giselle. Maybe it was Ghislaine, and my mother just said it so fast I heard it as Ghislaine. Maybe they called her Giselle. Maybe my mother always makes mistakes with names. She would call everyone the wrong name. The reason why I know it's her is because she always said she had a lot of money. She didn't say billionaire. She wouldn't give it away like my father. Because my father doesn't realize there's only so many billionaires. I'm going to be able to figure it out. It's not, you just say they have say multi-millionaire. You can't identify the person. Especially then, there were not a lot of billionaires 20 years ago. My father is a yutz. So so she mentioned this woman, Giselle, who had a lot of money. She would say, a lot of money, a lot of money. She would keep repeating it. That's how I knew it wasn't just a few $1 million. My mother knew a lot of people with a few $1 million. A lot of money, a lot of money. Oh yeah, a lot of money. Always a lot of money. And when I remember once inquiring about this person, my mother once said, oh no, she's a lot younger than me. And I looked yesterday. She's 20 years younger than my mother. That makes total sense. Epstein's 10 years younger. Dershowitz is the same age. Now you know the milieu my parents come from. Now I understand why my parents were so transfixed with Florida. And now I understand where my mother's money was coming from. Someone was feeding her money. Some rich, if it wasn't Giselle helping my mother cover for their life, it was Epstein, or just that my mother was involved in all that. I mean, once you're involved in that kind of circle, I don't think money is much of an issue. I mean, $2,000-3,000 to your son when you've got. I mean, my parents may have inherited 10 or 100 million. That's the truth. They didn't have us to care about us and nurture us. So, and they were narcissist, psychopathic, spoiled, fucking selfish people. And they were single in their mind. So they never wanted us. So they spent it on us when people would see it. They'd buy us, let's say, suits to go to weddings. When I was younger, my father had a Cadillac and I was able to drive it around. And now I realize, yeah, so my mother would tell everyone that I was working with my father. See, I never understood why they were acting so nice to me when I was 17, 16, and when I turned 18, they left. And they never called us again. They called us once every few months or something. We had to call them. Anyways, guys, that video is a long video, but I had to tell you guys because the whole world is talking about it. And I can now tell you guys, it's true, man. Dershowitz is going to go down, man. Although it's possible that he's smart enough not to have had. Oh no, someone said they had sex with her. I hope my mother doesn't get dragged into it, but I don't think she would because Canadian female. I mean, they didn't even arrest. They didn't even arrest this Epstein's partner yet. They never arrest a woman. When I was arrested for arguing with my ex girlfriend, the psychopath, when they set me up, and I was pulled away, they told me the cop looked in the back seat and said, "Dude," he said, "you can stop screaming." He says, "Even if you were bleeding," he said, "even if you were bleeding and your girlfriend had a knife in her hand, we have to take you to the police station because we never take the woman. It's just standard policy to leave the woman aside because women are." She explained it to me. Women are less destructive and less self-destructive. If you leave the man behind, even if she was the assaulter, right? Even if she was, he's more likely to kill himself, to kill just to burn the house down. He's gonna do something crazy. Whereas she, even if she is the psychopath, is more likely to sit still and just, deal with it mentally somehow. Try to get out of it. Try to lie her way out of it. Maneuver, manipulate. Whereas the man just gonna go ballistic, which is right. I was going ballistic there, but as soon as she told me that, I calmed down. But so my mother won't get pulled in. My father, I doubt he is involved. He's into boys, not girls. And thank God there were no boys at this Epstein's island, or else I would be really scared about what was about to be unveiled. Well, guys, I want you to watch later on. I have come to an amazing point with my borderline. I have discovered something, guys. You will not fucking believe it. If you don't have borderline, you won't believe it. If you do have borderline, I may really have figured out the actual insane reason why we're crazy. Yeah, maybe I'll record it right away. Very, very heavy times. Very heavy times. But, at least I got my answer, man. At least I got my answer. What was going on in Florida? Who, what was so mad? What, Florida? Another thing, boys. Another thing. Oh, God. This was... Are you still watching? Oh, my God. This video is for the records, man. My parents, even though they were perverts, even though they were like... My parents are basically liberals in Canada. They're liberals. They love Trudeau, and they're complete liberals. But they were in Florida. They were Republicans. And they would love to talk about it. Not about the politics. They never spoke about it. But they would just fight, and they'd like to get me angry. And it never made sense. Well, now I understand. If she was friends with Trump and all those rich Florida socialites, they're Republicans. My mother is a narcissist. My father's a psychopath. They don't have really any identity or value system. They just go right with their false image. And their false image was to be a Republican, wealthy socialite. So they would just say that whenever I'd be talking about politics and policy. They'd say, "Well, we're Republicans. We don't believe in that." Something like that. Like they wouldn't even be listening to me. My mother. That's my mother again. My mother was the one with this whole false image, fake thing. Like, so. I mean, she liked to push it on me. She liked to abuse me, basically. My father liked to leave it alone. He left it alone. He was just a lot less manipulative. He was just a lot less malevolent in that. His malevolence was more in the sex business, the sex business, the sex thing, going after. I mean, it was just compartmentalized differently, okay? But my mother would always say, if you want to talk about liberals, you want to talk that, go see your aunt. Yeah, because my aunt was dating Dershowitz, and Dershowitz, up to the point Trump became a president, was a Democrat. So she was basically laughing and poking at me. Well, I'm a Republican, but she's a Democrat. They were neither. They were just hanging out with those men so that each of their boyfriend, you know what I mean? It wasn't even representative of who they were. It was representative of where they were getting their money from, and their guys, or not their money, their narcissistic supply. I should, a lot of the time I think I'm saying money, but really you can replace it with narcissistic supply, because with a woman, when you get narcissistic supply, you're often getting money and favors with it. But when you're getting it from a man who's into you. Anyways, guys, I just cannot. I didn't think I'd figure that out. I didn't think I'd ever be able to get an eyeglass into Florida at all. I figured that was just going to remain a mystery. But now I have a pretty good damn idea what was going on there and why it was so attractive that they just could not stay away.